I want to tell everyone welcome. Again, this is more probably like our how-to video. This is just to give you some information about growing willows and then making some simple art to use for decorations for the Valentine. So I'm excited that you're here today with us. I'm going to go ahead and shut my video off. That way we can kind of focus on all of us being here. So I'm going to pull everything down to the bottom of my screen. So today we're really going to talk about, turn it on. Will you be my Valentine? Again, my name is Chris Lueking, and this is kind of the form that we're going to discuss a little bit. As you can kind of see, we're going to shape some willow here in some later slides. But today we're going to learn a little bit about Salix or willow and some heart armatures. When we're talking about Salix, one of the ones I grow, we at our local farm and my home farm, we grow willow, different types of willow. Ours is used in flower arrangements and other structure pieces for armatures. So one I really like is Salix alba. It's a golden willow. It's really grown mainly for the yellow stems. You might have seen those in some of the displays, possibly even winter interest displays that you're going to have. They're quite showy in the wintertime, and the foliage is a little bit smaller leafed if you use it whenever it's leafed out, but it's really great for wet locations. It's a multi-stem shrub, and it can be used for a screen, erosion control. I actually have it on a sloping hill, and I really like that. But if you want to know more about it, you could look at Missouri Botanical Garden. They have lots of information about different willows that you could utilize locally here in Southern Illinois or Northern Illinois, even in those different growing zones. Another thing that you can use willow for is really armatures. We're going to talk today about using willow to form some hearts, but armatures are used in floral design with our natural materials. We use it to incorporate in the foams in foam structures for shape, support, and stability, and really to get those floating compositions. You might have it designed out and give you some nice lines to your arrangements. Willow also can be weaved into baskets or living art. One of the sculptures that I really enjoy watching videos on, and I do have this clip, and I'm going to go ahead and let you guys look it up. But on campus, they've actually, this artist, Patrick Doherty, had taken willow sculpture and really weaved it and made it like a basket weave and made these walking paths and beautiful structures. We know that you can create lots of interest. And at the Ohio State University campus, this structure had about 30,000 pounds of willow branches. So it's amazing. There's different live sculptures throughout the country. And so this is another interesting thing that you can do with it. But this is a picture of spring at our house here in Southern Illinois. It's the best time for us to harvest in the wintertime, but also to plant salix, those willow cuttings. We can plant as the ground, I guess, temperature allows it, to be able to push it into it. But anywhere from January, when the weather starts to break, all the way through April, we can go ahead and successfully plant our willow branches, and we can propagate them ourselves as we take cuttings, or we can even buy cuttings at this time of year in spring. And typically, when you buy cuttings, they're coming in about the range of 10 to 12 inches long. So the one key thing, if you're going to propagate your own, or you have a friend that possibly has some salix, you want to make sure that you are propagating and you know the direction that that stem is growing. You want to make sure that the downward flow of that going towards the root system And you want to make sure that you mark it when you cut it. Because if you just cut a piece of the stem and you haven't marked it, sometimes you will have issues with that propagation. I have had a few issues trying myself to get some cuttings going if I don't have it in that correct direction. So just make sure you're taking a small Sharpie and marking that direction if you were taking your own propagations. The next thing you want to think about, we know that willow it's been around from ancient craft. Willow, there's evidence of it dating all the way back 8 to 10,000 years ago in the British Isles. We know Native Americans use willow branches for baskets and beds and some traditional dream catchers. It's very pliable. And I love using it. This is some curly willow that I have in this photo. It's great to use, and but you don't want it to dry out too much before you start using it. So you may have to soak it in water if you have it for a long period of time before you start to use it. Willow branches contain their own rooting hormone. So if you are planning on taking some of your own propagations, um, you need to think about that as well. They have this idol 3 butyric acid as well as salicylic acid, which protects the cuttings from fungi and bacterial infections. Really, this means that they do not need a rooting hormone like one of those auxins that you might dip it into that white powder. All you have to do is simply stick your cutting directly into water if you're wanting to hold it to make sure it roots, or directly into soil. And they'll start producing the little fine root structures on their own, and they'll grow just very well, even if you just stick them into a small container to start them if you can't transplant them later. You can use any, small 6x6 pot with some soil in it, potting soil. Start that root structure in there. You put your stem in. You can put it in any type of outdoor location. It'll start to go ahead and grow as long as the temperature starts to increase, and then it's going to go ahead and start producing those root system. But then you're going to start seeing those buds coming out of those nodules, and then you can, successfully transplant those out to another location if you need to. This is a picture right here of some pussy willow that is got the catnids. You can see the catnids are starting to elongate. They're going to go, they're starting to produce pollen here shortly, and then they'll go ahead and you'll see those flower onset of the leaf coming out after they kind of continue that flowering stage. Willow cutted roots easily. When we're doing these, we need to think about how we're going to plant them. And we can simply plant them into the ground, pushing them down into the soil. The soil cannot be completely frozen. What you'll do is you'll end up breaking and bending the bottom section of it. But you can, plant them. You could create a hole if you need to, with a little divot or a small trowel, but you can plant them as long as you're going down that 10 to 12 inch stem. You can plant it down at least 5 to 6 inches. They recommend that 6 to 8 inch if you're, having issues with that being an erosion area, or a lack of soil that's maybe running away from it if it's a wet area. But you can push it down. I've had success even at that 4 to 5 inch mark. So they don't take a lot of soil structure or having a lot of stability to really get established. You may want to map it if you have different varieties and label them. That way you just kind of know where you planted them. So as they get started, you can kind of keep track of them. You want to leave 2 to 3 buds above the soil surface. Those nodules that are going there, you can kind of push a little soil around the base of that stem to keep it secure, but you don't have to like tap it and tamp it in real hard. Maintain and check, they are one that really likes that moist conditions. So if you're going into a period of drought, you want to make sure that you're having that adequate water that first year. Minimize competition. We always know anything that has too much weed pressure is going to not be as successful. So making sure that you're accommodating enough water and minimizing that weeds. You can mulch if you'd like, but it's not necessary. But you do want to have it outcompete any weed pressure that's going to have be an issue in that area. If you were this picture here, if you're wanting to plant willow, you do not have to have it this close, right? This is more of a picture. If you're raising willow for basket weaving, you're wanting to have a smaller base and you're wanting to plant them closer together and irrigate them. If I You can use it if you're going to use a drip line or a soaker hose, even if you're having it in a real wet area, as long as you give it a little bit of moisture, they're gonna thrive. I'll be honest, they really thrive. But this is more of that picture of basket weaving where they really want those stems to be really elongated, and they're wanting them to be a smaller diameter so they can actually use them in a more of a functional capacity, opposed to maybe a floral designer that would spread it out a little more, that doesn't mind to have a little bit more diameter to maybe create larger armatures. Uh, Coppicing is cutting back that plant each year. This is usually used with a very sharp pruning shears, and you cut it back the long rods. You can take it. I mean, if your goal is to keep them looking very nice and just as winter interest, you can cut them back all the way down to about knee high, and they will thrive and do fine. I like to keep mine about waist high to a little bit lower than that. I want to have some of that winter interest, and I wanted mine to be, as you can see here, this is a picture of curly willow that I want those long multiple branches. So I tend to leave mine a little higher so I can get those that height and that length to it. I know it's a little harder with the backdrop here, but you can see all these branches. There's that golden branches. There's some red branching that's going here. These are those curly willow, and that dimension and that beautiful side branches is what my goal is. So it would depend on what your goal is if you want to lower them all the way down. This should be done though. You want to have nice straight growth and long branches to it. This should be done while that winter dormant season is going on. And you don't want to get it too late into that March, depending on the season, especially if we get those high temperature days that come around. But anytime between December and March, you should go ahead and prune these back. Again, be aware that they're going to have vigorous growth. So if you miss a year, um, you can think that they're going to become a larger diameter from that base. They're going to continue to have those branching side shoots, but they can become very enormous very quickly if you were not pruning them back. So I would say, be very cautious of that, and remember, pruning is your friend when you're working with willows. It's not a problem at all. A few disease concerns. You I have on our website on the University of Illinois Extension, you can go to the willow tree section for some more information. Some concerns that you can have is I have, as you can kind of see, mine are placed in rows. You can get some cankers if you have, a weed eater come by, or any like winter or spring storm that may have ice or heavy winds. Sometimes you'll have some root rot issues, some wood rot. You might have some breakage in some of those, joints of them that are kind of going. If you've cut back and you have an open wound, you might see that you have some cankers that are coming on with that. Powdery mildew is a concern on the leaves. Typically, I don't see that transfer to the stem, and that's really the portion we want to look at and utilize. So that's really not a problem so much. I don't treat for powdery mildew. It might be a concern if you are seeing it going and it's transferring to the stem. So just be aware of it. Leaf spot can occur, and sooty mold is another one that you might see. Some pests. Now, What we do want to think about though is that deer can become a problem. Possibly, if you're using this in a more commercial setting, or you're wanting to have a long row of it and it hasn't been established before, and you want to use it, deer might come through when they're small and nip those young leaf sets that are coming off. It might require some fencing until they become really established. Mine is out in the front. We do have deer pressure. I do have a Great Pyrenees dog that walks around, so typically she kind of scares them away. But if it is it is something to be conscious of, that you might have a little deer pressure, especially getting it established. Another thing is springtime, you're thinking if this has some new growth to it, rabbits might actually chew around the base of it. I've not had that happen. Usually mine gets pretty established and they get going and thriving before I have that issue. But just be aware, if you're in town, you might see a little rabbit or deer pressure. Some pests, we would see some feeding beetles, aphids. This will hold some scale, could get established because it is got so many stems to it. You might have a scale pressure. You might have some borers or even twig girdling going on, but typically I don't see a lot of pest pressure on my willow. As you can see, this is harvested stems, and it didn't have any pressure at all last season and into this season. But be watchful and scout and kind of correct that measure if you need to. So a fun fact, caterpillars can use Salix as a host plant for multiple species. Some of these species are Viceroy, Morning Cloak, red spotted, purple and white admiral butterflies, along with some of our moth species like to use willow, like the satin moth, and even dreadfully some tent caterpillars. So you just have to be aware, is it a beneficial insect that's feeding on it, or is it something that's going to be a little more detrimental that's going to strip the foliage? Again, even if they're using it as a host, it's really not going to be detrimental because we're looking at that stem. So if they eat some of the leaves, I have a higher tolerance for that maybe than some. So this is the part you guys came for. This is the fun part I enjoy. Again, I love cut flowers and I love to use some of my dried flowers. As a cut flower farmer, I always want to figure out how can I extend our season, or how can we make use some fun natural elements to actually use, along with some of our dried cut flowers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of walk through on how you can use willow and some dried flowers in our first example. And you can kind of see this is just some long willow branches that we used in this one. So some of the materials that you're going to need is you're going to need some bunches of willow. Salix, you can use some whatever variety. I'm really not demanding on what variety you use, whatever willow branches. You could even use some weeping willow branches, and you probably want to get that to be about 4 to 5 foot long if you're going to utilize those. But just make sure that you have some length to it so that they can bend. Um, Other items, this is some of the dried flowers that was used. We use this in one of our workshops. I use some dried celosia. You can see the plume celosia. You can use the crested celosia. Some gumbrina is great to use. Some river oats. Any of those items, if they're in your cut flower gardens, then you want to cut them and then dry them to utilize right now in the winter. This is a great additions to your cut flower garden. I would recommend to use some floral wire, or at least a 26 gauge wire. If you don't, floral wire already has some of that taped edges to it, so it's easy to work with, and you don't have to worry about it, getting anyone cut or having any issues with it. And then ribbon, you can accent with. It's not necessary, but it is a fun element to add to your natural elements. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our willow branch. You're going to want 4 to 5 stems in your hand. And you can either divide them out and have them, but you'll want to face them so that you can hold it in your hand. So the first step is to divide your branches out, pull one side to form a loop and create that one side of the heart. You can pull those stems past your base stem, and then you're going to wire them to that base. Now, if it's easier to put them all together and wire your bases to make a base at the bottom, that's okay. If you need to do this into 2 steps, that's fine too, where you kind of divide it out. But first thing you want to do though is you want to take one side of your loops, taking at least uh, 2 to 3 stem lengths, pulling that loop around and wiring it. If you want it to be really clear, looking very natural, you can then loop those ends back through around the wire, as you can kind of see on my third picture here to the far right. I just wrapped a couple of those ends around, and it covered up the mechanics of the wire. So it really has a really clean look to it. I tucked that end back through, kind of looped it back through, and made a little knot right there, and it covered up any of the wire. Then you would take your second set as you're going around, and you can make your second loop to create that heart. Now, sometimes you're going to see, depending on the length of your branches, you can make a real symmetrical heart. You can take and make a kind of loop to the side of it, depending on how pliable that willow is. But really, it's just bringing that second loop around, securing it to the base. As you see in the middle picture, we secured it here to the base and we looped those ends around. Now, the look could be that you want some of those side off, or you may want it really tight to the base and have a very straight base to it. That's entirely your choice. But you want to think about what is it going to look like and how am I going to design that loop to make it look heart shaped. I will tell you occasionally, if your willow is not very pliable, what you can do is you can take and soak it into water, fully submerge it like you would maybe a hydrangeas, completely in water, let it set for about an hour, and then bring it out. It tends to take up that moisture and it's a little more pliable if you're having issues. But it may be the length, it may be in multi branches, depending on which one you have. The fun part about a heart can be whatever desired position you want. You may have a really loopy heart, you may have a real tight heart, you may have multiple stems. You may bring in and you go, oh, one side's a little flat. I want to make them a little wider. That's really, it's your desired position. So you can be completely creative on this end of it. You can see there's 3 different hearts displayed here. One's a little thicker, one's a little flat on one side, one's a real nice heart loop. So it's entirely what you want out of it. You can see here. The next part of your heart, once you get that fully secured, remember you're going to wire to the base. You can either loop in your bottoms through and thread them through, or you can add more willow and just wrap it around and just tie it off to secure and cover your mechanics, whatever it works on that end of it. But the next thing you want to do as we're creating our heart, we're going to create some floral elements using our dried materials, and we're going to attach that now to our heart base. So the first step we want to do is we want to select some of our dried flowers, grasses. You might even have some dried eucalyptus or foliage that you want to add to your bouquet. Anything is absolutely, it's your selection. The second step, we want to arrange your items onto your heart, kind of as you desire. You don't want to pick and get big bunches, maybe in the beginning, you may want to be selective and do a few items just to see how it looks on your heart as you kind of get going throughout. This is some bunches of plume celosia. You can see this was a bright hot pink variety of the plumes. It kept its color and it looked magnificent for our event. So this is going to be our third step. As we make our selection, we went ahead, as you can see, they're a little more dainty. You can make them a little thicker, but the first thing you want to do is you want to place on your workstation some of the grasses or the dried flowers along your heart base and secure that with some of that 20 gauge or 26 gauge floral wire. Some of it's a little more pliable, so whichever you want. Um, Put your design. If you like the grasses, it may be more of an airy element. This river sea oats kind of flowed over to the side, gave it that airy component, give a lot of texture to it. You can add, your line elements. You can add some of the gumfrina here, whatever that looks like to you. That's absolutely, some of that artistic ability you get to kind of see. You can take that and arrange it completely to one side, allowing your loops to kind of show, or you might want to put it directly in the dead center of your heart and have your heart as an armature around that bouquet. And that's part of that artistic ability that you have to kind of have fun with your designs. The one thing you want to think about is that you want to tie your wire loop on the back side to kind of hide your mechanics. You can add a ribbon to it. You can have another element. If you don't like ribbon, you might want to wrap the ribbon instead of making a bow. Wrap it completely on the far base of your heart. It really is, your decision. We chose to use some small, thin pieces of a fabric ribbon that had some hearts on them, and then we tied a loop on the back side of around the base of it so that we could actually hang it on the door or on the wall. So, allowing that wire to be exposed under your ribbon is okay because you want a little bit of a loop to be able to hang it. Then you can use command hooks or something to hang it up with that. But really, it's about having fun with those designs and being very artistic with it. So I have another great one to use. This one is with using just strictly pussy willow branches. That's going to have that fun, artistic, natural element. We grow this pussy willow. You can kind of see it's pretty fresh. You can kind of see the green stems to it. Once it starts to dry out, it's a little less pliable to make those full loop and kind of arches to it. It's still very usable in flower arrangements, but it's a little bit harder to manipulate if you don't use them when they're fairly fresh cut. So this one is going to be a second example. I want to kind of show you, and we'll walk through using some fresh flowers kind of as a second example for you. So on this one, what we did was we created the pussy willow heart base. Because these stems were a little bit shorter, and that's just because that's kind of the length of the one that was ready. We went ahead and cut it. It was a little bit shorter, but it's still very had enough length to it. They were about 3 foot long, so it was still enough length to pull that back down and still look like a really nice heart to it. You can see we had snow on the ground. We had 10 inches of snow, so we were still able to utilize this pussy willow. So the first step is to select about 6 stems if you want a thicker look like what we have to form one side of that heart base. We went ahead and bent that back to the base itself, and then we wired it, as you can kind of see, that loop back to the center base. Now, because they were kind of thicker and a little shorter, it was easier to make one side a loop and then make the other side kind of the same way. Repeat that step. That made that second loop of the heart, and then we actually wired the 2 loops together. As you can kind of see on this third picture on the far right, we actually wired it around the center base, around where Callie has her hands kind of holding it right there. we actually wired it right there with some green floral wire. It still made a very beautiful heart base to it with that little bit of wire structure holding all those stems. And you can kind of see here, this is the two sections we wired and we wired again. We plan on adding the fresh flowers to it, so I didn't care if the mechanics were showing just a tad bit. So our third step is that you can place some greenery. We had some leaves here that we looped because we really want to showcase those heart armature. So I don't want to take away by adding some long, tall greens to it. Um, we used some carnations because it is Valentine's. So we wanted to utilize some carnations and some baby's breath. And so we just created a small bouquet that could go actually in the center part of the heart base. We went ahead and wired it with our floral wire to the back side of the heart. Now, remember, this is going to be a fresh arrangement and it's not going to be necessarily in a water source unless you put it into a vase. But if you're going to give this to someone, it would be okay. This would be more like a presentation gift to them. You can secure it to the stems to the heart base and then attach your ribbon like we did at the bottom part of our artwork in there. Now, this would be something to hang. We know that the fresh florals will wither and die unless we put a floral, like a water plug on them fairly quickly. But we could also add that to a mason jar or a vase and add water to it. Then it would stay fresh and more viable. So that's really up to you. This is just giving you an idea of how to create that look. We decided to go because we wanted this more to be a heart to be able to hang or to present to someone. So we did a smaller loopy bow at the very bottom. But you're welcome to have fun with any of your designs and how you want to display your heart base with it. The next kind I wanted to kind of show you was I actually did a hort how-to video in our unit. Andrew had kind of talked that I'm in a 5 county unit, kind of in Southern Illinois, and I do some hortu how-to videos. So I do have some floral arranging ones on there, but there's a link and we'll send that out. But you can go to our Extension YouTube channel. It's Illinois Extension BCJMW. And this is a Valentine heart. You can see I did an armature of our willows on there. I will tell you, I struggled in this video, so don't feel bad at all if you struggle the first time you use willow. This willow, because of the weather and snow, I was trying to get it ready for your video today. And I will tell you the willow actually dried out a little further along because the house was a little warmer than I had anticipated with the cold and the snow that we had. And it tended to dry out that willow a little sooner than I wanted it to make the video. So as I began to try to make my hearts, I did have some that actually didn't really form a great heart. Loop, it kind of bent. One of them actually broke on me because it dried out too much. So it is a practice that even, ones that I've done it multiple times, I even struggled in this video. So there are chances, make sure that you're not buying the minimal amount or cutting it. You may want to cut an extra piece that you can add in case you have one that bends. You can kind of see in my picture here, one of my loops kind of fell apart. They were pulling out of my wire a little bit, but I really wanted it to be more of a side floral display on that heart armature. So for me, I made it work out. I made some smaller willow hearts in there. In the loops, and if you go to the video, you'll see we made those pussy willow just 2 loops each and made it like more dimensional and turned it. And then we also we used a little larger floral display. So that has a lot of textures and dried elements to it and a larger bow. but it's definitely, you get to be artistic with it. No one really will criticize your heart or your ideas because it's really can be, they're all very unique in their own right. So please don't deter that at all from trying. It's amazing to do, and it gets to be a lot of fun the more practice that you have with it. And with that, I want to kind of leave you a couple quotes. Love is a flower you've got to let grow by John Lennon. And flowers always make people feel better, happier, and more helpful. They are sunshine, food, and medicine for the soul. Luther Burbank. So if you enjoyed this video today, please go back and view some of our past recordings of the Four Seasons gardening series on YouTube. Here is the link to be able to find some of our Four Seasons recordings and webinars that we've done in the past. And then this is our brief survey that we're going to have for you, and I'm going to leave it up here in just a second. But we're going to go with any questions that you have. Again, this is myself, Christina Lueking, and you can always reach out to me if you have further questions about growing willow or how I actually created any of these armatures. So I'm going to leave this up with our brief survey for you today.